Anytime a sport has a dominant champion, you're constantly on the search for a rival. Who is going to overtake them someday? And in chess, since we have Magnus Carlsen, we're looking at the younger generation. Is it going to be Alireza Firouzja? Or is it going to be the player who I'm covering in this video, Nihal Sarin of India? He's currently the 10th highest rated player in his country, and he's the 6th highest rated player in the world in people who are under the age of 21. But coronavirus prevented him from playing a tournament for 10 straight months, and still counting, so I think he's significantly stronger than his 26-20 elo, and he frequently scores 25 to 30% against Magnus Carlsen anytime they play Blitz and Bullet. Today, I am covering his Brilliancy Prize game from the World Youth and Cadet Championships, which were held online, in conjunction with Gazprom, which is the general partner, a Russian gas company. Very cool that there is corporate sponsorship for these tournaments, because I'm just saying, in the United States, we have almost no corporate sponsorships. So very, very cool that this is happening. And I actually was a coach for Team USA in last year's World Championships, held in Weifang, China. And the person that I worked with, Yan Ruyang, who's to my right, won the bronze medal. So a little bit of memory lane, but this video is all about Nihal Sarin. Let's jump into his brilliant game. He began with d4, and he's playing Francesco Sonis of Italy, international master who I've played many times in Blitz. The game begins with a Queen's Gambit decline, Knight c3, and Black can play a lot of moves here. In this game, Black plays Bishop to b4, which is the Queen's Gambit declined Ragozin variation. Point is to pin this Knight to the King. Now, I personally, in this position, like to play Queen to a4 check, hitting the Bishop and the King. That doesn't win material, but it forces the Knight to stand in front of the c-pawn and makes Black's position a little bit clumsy. In this game, Nihal goes for Bishop g5, which is the classical developing move. Black can play a few things here, but Black chooses to take the pawn on c4, inviting immediate clarification of what is happening in the game. Nihal plays the move e4. Nihal has played this many times with White, by the way, so clearly Black was preparing for this, and now Black plays the move h6. Already the game, by the way, is taking kind of branches. So in this position, Black also can play the move c5, and the position can explode. Black can play the move b5, basically just hanging on to this pawn, and you cannot take it because of the pin. But in the game, Black plays h6, asking a question of this bishop. Nihal takes, and takes back the pawn on c4. So Nihal has two central pawns. He's got the two knights, he's got the bishop. He's going to castle and say, I have a slightly better position. But Francesco's not going to let him just do that, so he immediately strikes out with c5. Now, here White can do a handful of things. White can take, White can push, and White can also maybe attack the bishop. Or White can attack the queen. If you're looking at this position as a beginner and intermediate player, it's easy to get lost even right away. But realize that actually White's position, you have to be careful. Because, for example, if you take this pawn, Black is already taking, and now the queen is hitting here. So after this, you are in some trouble. Your bishop is hit, you have to back up with the knight to guard your bishop, kind of an unpleasant position. All right? So Nihal correctly just castles. Why is he castling? Because if you notice, it's the 9th move of the game. Black only has 2 pieces out, right? White has bishop, knight, knight, now is castled, and now Black plays another move that hits the center, but isn't getting development, right? Queen and bishop are the only things that are out. So Nihal here, with his knight under attack, and this can be taken 2 different ways, actually chooses not to take the pawn. He uses the concept of danger levels. My knight is hanging, but I don't have to move it if I can play the move pawn to e5. This gains me space, attacks the queen, and allows my knight to go to e4. Already an interesting creative idea. Queen goes back to d8, and now knight to e4, and finally Black castles. Okay, so again, White can take this with the queen or with the knight. If you take with the queen, we trade, and it's a fair trade, but if I have a lead in development and more pieces out, I don't want to trade pieces. I want more pieces in the game. So for that reason, here Nihal does take on d4 with the knight. What's interesting is that, actually a move ago, knight takes d4 almost never is played. Actually, like, this whole position that Nihal got, and then threw in a move here that almost never gets played, is kind of fascinating, because this game had happened many times already. After knight takes d4, his opponent plays queen c7, attacking the pawn at e5, and there are no more games, according to my database. So Nihal takes his opponent into deep water, and of course, now that there is a bishop under attack and a pawn under attack, well, he plays the very, very natural move, knight f6 check, losing a piece. I'm joking. It's not a very natural move, and it showcases why he's so clever. he attacks the king. And black actually plays the move king to h8. He doesn't take it because if you take the knight, it could get very scary here with the queen coming. It's just queen opposite king. If the king goes to h7, defending the pawn, I take like this. You have to prevent checkmate. You can only do that by playing this. What is more valuable than a queen? A king. And I'm already swarming you with my bishop, my queen, my pawn, and maybe my knight in the future. Black is completely losing here. So black chooses not to engage and to play king h8, leaving this, and leaving this. So 3 problems for white to solve. So what does white do? White plays queen c2. White solves one of the problems, which is this, right? Now black does take on f6. Okay, this pawn is hit 2 different ways. So Nihal plays queen c2, which threatens mate, by the way, which is why this knight had to be dealt with, right? And now queen c1. Look at that move. I mean, a move that looks like it's just completely disregarding all the problems in your position, but queen takes h6, and it's not easy at all to protect this. Again, if king goes to h7, you walk into this and this. Somehow, all of black's moves are being used against him. The queen going to this natural c7 square. Because of this queen c1 idea, pressuring this and the queen, the king can now not go to h7, so black has to take on e5 with the queen, allowing the queen in. And now, well, you're right there, but you can't get there with the knight. Well, what if you play bishop to d3? Well, then black just plays the move f5. They've used the pawn barrier to block out your bishop, your knight is hanging, and the queen is going to get back. So Nihal has one move. He's got one move or the whole charade falls apart. f4. Oh my. The move f4 gives away the knight with a check. And if king h1, it also gives away a third piece. But if you take the third piece and temporarily go up 9 points of material, I have rook f3. And you cannot prevent rook g3 mate. You just cannot prevent it. I mean, you have all these pieces, but you haven't moved them, right? So he cannot take the bishop. He doesn't take the bishop, and instead he plays queen to e4. The point of queen to e4 is that now when the rook is coming, the queen goes back to g6, right? And it's back in time, but white is just on time with this move rook to g3, and black has to sacrifice. And okay, what on earth is going on here? Black is still up 2 points of material. The overall count is queen for rook, knight, and bishop. If my math is right, rook, knight, and bishop. So under normal circumstances, queen versus some sort of piece imbalance, it requires the person that lacks a queen to develop all of their pieces as actively as possible and make sure they coordinate. Active pieces and coordination. That is what is going to prove decisive against the queen, which can hit you in multiple directions. When you have the queen, what do you need to do? Hunt down a passive king or a weak king. That always helps. Piece coordination, of course, is important because if you have the queen, you don't have enough pieces. You're lacking other pieces. So you got to maximize, you got to limit trades unless absolutely necessary, and pawns. The play of your pawns. If you can get a pawn majority somewhere with the extra queen, you've got to advance your pawns. Let's see those things at play in this game. Black plays rook e8 because black does not have any reason to hang on to this pawn. What's going to happen if you do this is white is going to have enough time to play this move f5. And if you take, you've just opened up my bishop to your territory. If you don't take, don't forget I have this maneuver anytime I want it, right? So I can play something like g4. Look at this. My pawns are barricading you from saving your king, and then I'm going to attack you, and I'm going to win the game. I'm going to literally just bring my rook, and you're going to lose. So black needs to part ways with a pawn in order to get pieces developed, right? That's exactly what black begins to do. Rook d1 and knight d7. Of course, you say, well, Levy, why not knight c6? That seems far more natural. It's the most natural square for the knight. Well, black had some ideas. I mean, black wanted to get the knight to f6 potentially. If you play knight to c6, what is Nihal going to do once he has all these active pieces? Remember that thing I said about pawns? I said it for a reason. g4. Nihal is going to try to use his pawn majority. And if you play something like knight to e7, for example, to try to go, to try to stop me from playing f5, I can pick apart your defenses here. I have this move, for example. My rook can come in, and I can stop you from moving. And that is exactly what Nihal does this game. First, he plays bishop b5, attacking the knight. Francesco responds f6. I cannot guard my knight, but I can counterattack your queen. at the price of your queen getting closer to my weak king. Now I play rook e7, and here Nihal plays the most, in my opinion, the most gangster move of the game, the classiest move of the game, a move that many of us take for granted because it's a grandmaster playing with the white pieces, but this is a beautiful move. Rook d6, and it's not even so clear right away why this is such a powerful move. The engine even needs a little bit of time to fully understand it. Essentially, this is like if you have a younger sibling and they're trying to throw punches at you, you put your hand on their forehead and then they can't make any forward progress. That is what the move rook d6 is basically. It forever pressures everything, and it kills black's mobility. And anticipating that this move is going to happen, Nihal drops back to d3, hitting h7 with the queen, but not killing the activity of his rook. He swaps his rook forward, moves his bishop behind the rook, and after b5 with black trying to develop the bishop this way, Nihal is able to start playing queen e4, rook a7, and rook takes e6. So he uses what he thinks was black's plan to develop his pieces against black, wins the pawn on e6. And of course, you know, if you plug the game into an engine, the engine here is going to tell you, oh, white should have went immediately with f5. Computers can kill sometimes the allure of the game, the beauty of the game, the understanding of the game, because they see some really strange ideas. But ultimately, Nihal shows a dominance in this game. He anticipates everything his opponent is doing. He forces moves out of his opponent that weaken the position. That's what Nihal does. He fakes the takedown, right? Like in mixed martial arts. You go down, boom, he cracks you with a punch. Nihal constantly is keeping his opponent a move behind him. Look at this. Knight c5 with the fork. Queen goes to h7. What's worth more than a queen, a rook, and a bishop? The king, right? So king goes to f8. Rook c6. Uh-oh. I'm starting to pick apart the defenses. Here, okay, we got to trade. I said don't trade unless absolutely necessary. Bishop f5. Levy, you said don't trade. You said don't trade. Why is he trading? Here's why. Because when this happens, remember I also said piece activity and coordination? Black's pieces have no coordination here. The bishop is so bad. Black basically has rook and knight for queen, not a bishop. And pawn majority. Remember I said that? Pawn majority? When you've got the queen 3-on-1. This pawn majority is going to win you the game. Not the queenside pawns, because that's 2-on-2. It's wherever your pawns are stronger. So Francesco doesn't want to trade. He wants to maintain activity. But now Nihal finds the nail in the coffin. The killer move. The move of the game. You want to pause here. You want to find it. This move permanently shuts down black's pieces. Completely immobilizes them. b4. Levy, you just said the queenside pawns aren't going to make a difference. Well, not in terms of breaking through, but in terms of a very useful move which forces a very uncomfortable decision out of this knight. Does the knight continue to try to move forward? This is the only way that it can do so. Well, the problem is the knight is covering the e6 square. And what's going to happen on the e6 square? That. And in the game, it didn't really matter. The knight went backwards. Bishop e6. And you can't stop queen g8. And now after king e7, yes, you can take the bishop, but then you would lose this. So he takes on d7, rook d7, and now picks up the bishop. And Nihal is winning here, finally. After queen takes f6, rook f7, queen back to c3, a little bit of shuffling here, and then he brings the king. It's still not like it. Again, we're taking for granted the fact that this is Nihal playing. For example, let's say he got hasty and moved his f-pawn, right? He got hasty and played f5. It's still winning for white. But what happens when I play rook to e2? I mean, now suddenly you have to deal with counterplay, right? I'm not saying that black is doing tremendously well here. Black is still losing, but Nihal controls everything. He doesn't let the opponent get closer. You can give me a check. I'm going to slide over. That's what he does. He actually preemptively moves his king out of danger. And now who's going to decide this game? Have you been paying attention? The pawns. g5, rook c4, queen h7 check. And Francesco resigned. He resigned because it would have been a very long and painful death he would have suffered in this game. There would have been a check. If he hides his king over here, I'm just going to push. And again, the queen is so powerful, I'm not worried about losing my queenside pawns. Because anytime you take, I'm just going to hit you with one of these, and then I'm going to win your rook. That's the amazing thing about a queen. When an enemy king has holes around it, right? Notice this, the king's got holes. It's impossible to cover all these holes. you've got tactics from all sorts of directions. But the pawns here were the deciding factor in this queen versus material imbalance. And most importantly, if we back up just some moves, it was the passivity or the passiveness, I hope one of those was a word because I'm not sure the other was, of black's pieces. Francesco in this game almost didn't cross the third rank. Look at Francesco's pieces. With the exception of the knight, just the knight on c5, did a single piece for Francesco cross the... No, I don't think so. I mean, that's insane. Like, to have such a high-level game against a high-level opponent from Nihal and not let his opponent cross the middle line, in my opinion, he is absolutely the deserving winner of the Brilliancy Prize. This is who I nominate. And once again, just amazing that, you know, we have this kind of sponsorship, this degree of sponsorship for all of these online events from FIDE, the international governing body of chess. Because, frankly speaking, who knows when over-the-board chess will be consistent. But in my opinion, I nominate Nihal, and I mean, he's winning 25 to 30% of his games against Magnus Carlsen. He's playing like this. When over-the-board chess comes back, I look forward to this young man potentially being the next rival to our world champion.